In the modern world of relationships, love has become a performance. We no longer seek depth, we seek validation. We don't fall in love to understand the other person. We fall in love to see ourselves reflected in their admiration. But what happens when that mirror breaks? When the admiration turns into manipulation? When trust is replaced by silence? When affection becomes a weapon of control? Byung-Chul Han, one of today's most piercing philosophers, once said that modern relationships have lost their eros of distance. We no longer respect the mystery of another soul. We consume it. And when love becomes consumption, forgiveness becomes weakness. So today we're diving deep into what you should never forgive a woman for in a relationship. And why? Because there are boundaries that protect your dignity. And once crossed, forgiveness is not compassion. It's surrender. Let's begin. Part 1. When she disrespects your essence. There's a difference between conflict and contempt. Conflict means two people care enough to fight for something real. Contempt means one person sees the other as less. When a woman mocks your purpose, laughs at your pain, or dismisses your silence, she's not just attacking your ego, she's disrespecting your essence. Byung-Chul Han describes modern society as the society of transparency, where everything, feelings, thoughts, and identities must be exposed. But real masculinity thrives in mystery, in restraint, in that quiet space where a man thinks before he reacts. When she demands access to every corner of your mind, when she can't tolerate your distance or your focus, she's not loving you, she's trying to own you. And when ownership enters love, destruction soon follows. Never forgive a woman who disrespects your silence, because your silence is where your power lives. It's the sacred space where your thoughts take shape, your values grow roots, and your emotions find order. If she mocks your discipline, she's mocking the very structure that holds your life together. If she makes you feel guilty for focusing on your purpose, she's not your partner, she's your distraction. Byung-Chul Han argues that in the digital age, everything becomes communication without community. We talk endlessly yet understand nothing. And many relationships today reflect that emptiness. Constant talking, endless emotional expression, yet no understanding of respect. A woman who loves you will respect your stillness. A woman who fears losing control will attack it. The moment you forgive that attack, you teach her that your essence can be negotiated. And once your essence becomes negotiable, she will never see you as unshakable again. Part 2. When she betrays trust for attention. Attention. That's the new currency of love. Not loyalty, not patience, attention. And in a culture that rewards exposure, the temptation to betray trust for validation is everywhere. Byung-Chul Han warns that our society has turned desire into display. We no longer desire what is hidden. We crave what can be seen, liked and shared. So when a woman flirts publicly, overshares intimate details, or posts suggestive content while claiming loyalty, she's not just seeking admiration. She's converting intimacy into currency. Never forgive a woman who trades your privacy for attention, because that betrayal isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. It signals that her loyalty is conditional on the applause of others. A relationship built on real value doesn't need an audience. Love grows in the unseen, in the quiet moments, the private conversations, the subtle acts of trust that no one else will ever witness. But when she chooses public validation over private respect, she's revealing her true devotion, not to you, but to her image. And this is where many men lose themselves. They confuse tolerance with strength. They forgive public disrespect in the name of love. But forgiveness without accountability is permission, and permission breeds patterns. Byung-Chul Han says that in a world obsessed with visibility, what is unseen loses meaning. That's why real men today must reclaim mystery, not only in how they love, but in how they forgive. When you forgive a woman for seeking attention through betrayal, you destroy the sacredness of your connection. You reduce your love to a transaction, one where your pain becomes her power. Forgiveness is divine, but it's not blind. Forgiveness must serve truth, not convenience. And truth says, once loyalty is auctioned off for attention, love can never return to innocence. So remember this. Never forgive a woman who values exposure more than intimacy. Because a woman addicted to attention is not in love with you. She's in love with herself through you. And no man can win against a mirror that loves its own reflection. Parts 3 to 5 will continue with deeper themes: emotional manipulation, loss of respect, hidden resentment, and the philosophical meaning of distance in love according to Byung-Chul Han. Emotions are powerful. They connect us, but they can also control us. And Byung-Chul Han says that today's society is ruled by emotional capitalism. We sell feelings, we consume them, and we weaponize them. Love has become less about understanding and more about influence. When a woman learns how to use her emotions not as expressions but as tools, tears to silence you, anger to guilt you, affection to confuse you, that's not intimacy, it's control. And no matter how gentle her tone or how fragile she may appear, manipulation is the highest form of disrespect. You must never forgive a woman who makes your empathy a weakness, because she's teaching herself that your compassion is her weapon. Byung-Chul Han warns that in the achievement society, people no longer dominate through commands, but through self-exploitation. And emotional manipulation is exactly that. It makes you exploit yourself. You start apologizing when you've done nothing wrong. You start explaining yourself when you've been silent. You start bending reality just to keep her calm. That's not love. That's submission dressed as sensitivity. A relationship that forces you to suppress your truth for peace will slowly destroy your spirit. Forgiveness here is dangerous, because every time you forgive emotional manipulation, you condition yourself to accept pain as normal. And once pain feels normal, respect becomes impossible. Remember, genuine emotion seeks connection, but manipulation seeks control. If she uses her emotions to twist your sense of right and wrong, you are not her partner, you are her project. And no man can lead his life while being treated like a project that constantly needs fixing. Never forgive the woman who manipulates love to win arguments, who fakes vulnerability to avoid accountability, or who uses silence not for peace but for punishment. Because love cannot grow where truth is constantly distorted. A man's direction in life is his compass. It's not ego, it's identity. Byung-Chul Han wrote that the modern world suffers from the exhaustion of meaning. Men are no longer allowed to lead. They're told to adjust, compromise, and soften until there's nothing left that defines them. When a woman sees your focus and tries to dilute it by calling you selfish, cold, or distant, she's not protecting love. She's protecting control. A real woman complements a man's direction. A fearful woman competes with it. Never forgive the woman who mocks your discipline, your ambition, or your dreams. Because these are not hobbies, they are the architecture of your purpose. Byung-Chul Han argues that the modern human is enslaved not by others, but by the pressure to please everyone. And many men today are prisoners of emotional diplomacy, always trying to be understood, always explaining their actions, always negotiating their worth. If she needs you to constantly justify your purpose, she doesn't respect your direction. And once your direction loses her respect, she'll test your leadership at every turn. Forgiveness here doesn't rebuild love. It dissolves authority. You teach her that your purpose can be questioned without consequence. And slowly, she'll stop seeing you as a man to follow and start seeing you as a man to manage. The greatest betrayal in any relationship isn't infidelity. It's the quiet erosion of respect. When she stops believing in your direction, she starts preparing her exit. But she won't always leave physically. Sometimes she just withdraws emotionally, taking her admiration with her, leaving you to chase her validation like a shadow. Never forgive that erosion. Because the moment she stops admiring your direction, love has already begun to die. There's a sacred boundary in every relationship, the boundary of dignity. Once crossed, it cannot be restored with words. Byung-Chul Han said that in our culture of hyper-communication, shame has vanished. People share everything, their thoughts, their bodies, their anger, without restraint. But love without restraint becomes chaos. A woman who disrespects you publicly, who mocks you in front of others, exposes private arguments or uses social media to humiliate you, is showing the world what she truly thinks of you. And that is something you should never forgive, because public disrespect is not a mistake. It's a statement. It's her telling you that your dignity is worth less than her moment of emotional satisfaction. In private, forgiveness can heal. But in public, humiliation stains. Even if you forgive her, others won't forget. And neither will your subconscious. Byung-Chul Han teaches that in the age of exposure, what was once sacred becomes spectacle. When a woman makes your pain a spectacle, she's not seeking understanding. She's seeking power. And power gained through humiliation is poison. You must never let love turn into theater. Because the moment your relationship becomes a performance for others, it stops being real. A man who values his dignity above approval is a man who can't be manipulated. Never forgive the woman who tries to test that boundary. Because a woman who laughs at your pain today will not cry for your loss tomorrow. Public disrespect is the death of emotional safety, and without safety no love can survive. Forgiveness in this case is not noble. It's naive. Because she won't see it as compassion. She'll see it as confirmation that she can do it again. So remember, never forgive the woman who shames you publicly, who exposes your weakness for attention, or who jokes about your worth. Because the world will watch her laugh, but only you will feel the cut. And some cuts, no matter how well they heal, leave scars that change how you love forever. Parts 6 and 7 will explore emotional distance, the philosophy of letting go, and Byung-Chul Han's idea that true love can only survive in the space between two strong individuals, not in the collapse of one into the other. There's a difference between space and distance. Space gives room for growth. Distance creates separation. Byung-Chul Han writes that true intimacy only exists when two people respect each other's solitude, when closeness doesn't mean possession, and silence doesn't mean rejection. But many modern relationships have lost this understanding. In the name of power, some women weaponize distance, not as a moment to breathe, but as a strategy to make you chase. They withdraw affection to create uncertainty. They disappear to provoke anxiety, and they withhold communication to test control. It's not emotional maturity. It's psychological warfare dressed as self-care. Never forgive a woman who punishes you with absence. Because real love doesn't disappear to prove a point. It stays to find a solution. When she makes you earn back her attention after every disagreement, she's not seeking peace. She's seeking domination. Byung-Chul Han calls this the fatigue of connection. In a world of endless communication, people have forgotten how to truly connect, so they retreat, not to rest but to manipulate. And men who fall for this game lose their center. They start chasing validation instead of maintaining direction. You cannot build a relationship where distance is used as discipline, because every punishment disguised as silence kills trust. And every time you forgive it, you train her to use it again. A woman who loves you may need space, but she will never make you feel invisible. A woman who seeks control will use silence to make you question your worth. Never forgive that kind of distance. It's not love withdrawing, it's ego attacking. Forgiveness here isn't healing, it's erasure. You erase your boundaries to protect her behavior, and in that moment, you don't lose her. You lose yourself. Byung-Chul Han's most profound idea about love is that it requires distance. The sacred gap that allows two people to truly see one another. He says love dies when that space collapses. When one person invades, controls, and consumes the other, love suffocates under the weight of proximity. Never forgive a woman who refuses to honor that distance. Because love without distance is not love. It's dependency. It's an emotional cage disguised as closeness. When she demands constant reassurance, checks your phone, questions your silence, and doubts your loyalty, she's not showing love, she's showing fear. And fear is the opposite of trust. Byung-Chul Han teaches that real intimacy is born from respect, not exposure. The mystery between two people keeps love alive. It keeps admiration breathing. Once you forgive the violation of that mystery, you accept being watched, measured, and controlled. And no man can remain powerful under surveillance. Love must breathe, and for it to breathe, there must be space. Space to think, to grow, to miss, to desire. Without that, passion becomes paranoia, and forgiveness becomes addiction. Never forgive a woman who tries to own what she should admire. Your freedom. Because when a man's freedom dies, his love dies with it. Byung-Chul Han reminds us that love, like all beauty, lives in fragility. It cannot survive in control, it cannot breathe in domination, and it cannot heal through blind forgiveness. Forgiveness is sacred, but only when it restores balance, not when it destroys dignity. Some men forgive because they fear being alone. But solitude is not punishment, it's power. It's the quiet forge where a man remembers who he is, rebuilds his boundaries, and rediscovers his worth. Never forgive a woman who makes you forget your value. Never forgive betrayal disguised as affection, control disguised as care, or humiliation disguised as honesty. Byung-Chul Han says that modern love is losing its depth because we no longer respect distance. So protect your distance, protect your peace, protect your purpose. Forgive only what strengthens your soul. Because true love doesn't demand that you lose yourself. It demands that you become more of who you already are. And when you master that, you don't just love differently, you live differently.